Ladies and gents, and welcome to CG Reaction, and this is Unbiased History Imperial Wrath by the channel Jovian. Last video was about Constantine the Great. We saw how Constantine made another capital city called Constantinople, and basically massacred Praetorian Guards, which was the best thing that ever happened to this entire damn series. That was the best. That was the peak of this series to me. Because screw those Praetorian Guards, that's what I said. So yeah, that was a long time coming. Constantine was just epic. Lots of people tried to kill him like every other past emperors, but he saw them coming and killed them instead, which I loaded because anybody can be dominant and powerful, but if you're just gonna get stabbed in the back by some nobody, to me that's not something big. You're not that great to me. Constantine was truly the great because he saw lots of people coming to him and he killed them. He died in the end by natural causes, I'm pretty sure, yeah. In the end, he kind of broke the peace with those Sassanid Empire. And Sassanid Empire might be one of the reasons why Rome falls. Who knows? I don't know. We're going to see these last 3 episodes are left. But this is going to be depressing from now on. Last 3 episodes, Imperial Wrath, then Barbarians at the Gate, and in the end, the fall of Rome. So I highly doubt there is anything new coming. I highly doubt Rome's going to rise now. This is just downhill from here, I'm pretty sure. But then again, I've said that in the past too, and people like Constantine, Aurelian, people like that came, Diocletian. So yeah, Diocletian was great, Aurelian was obviously legendary, Constantine was the last great emperor. So yeah, we're gonna see now what happens in Imperial Wrath. Constantine's, children are going to take over. So yeah, let's watch it.
The light of Rome fades, the barbarians near, and the storm gathers. This is the beginning of the end. Constantine was dead, and the first to react was the middle child, Constantius II, then appointed to lead the Sassanid campaign. He then rushed to Constantinople to see the funeral of his father, overseen by Eusebius, the Arian bishop that baptized him. Constantius then buried his father, the equal of the apostles, on the Temple of the Apostles, surrounded by his half-uncles and half-nephews, who he then had all slaughtered in the massacre of the princes, blaming them for the death of his father in his paranoia, and seeking to prevent future power disputes in his good sense. Again,
Yeah, there you go. I'm like, what the hell? He killed his uncles and nephews, but yeah, okay. So they don't rise up and try to take power. So that was a greedy move, apparently.
half Fausta, half Constantine. The only males he spared were 3 of his cousins, Gallus, Nepotianus, and Julian, due to them being mere children, then sending Julian and his brother to go study under Eusebius, who then had him read every single book about Christian and pagan theology there was, which he did voluntarily as a natural prodigy, while Gallus picked his nose or whatever. If you're wondering about the discrepancy, remember that they are half-brothers. Julius Constantius had Gallus with his first wife, Galla, who had firstly had a daughter, by the way, and that nameless elder sister would then have her own daughter, Justina, who would eventually become famous for her radiant beauty. Constantius then divided Damatius's lands with Constans, who, since he wasn't yet an adult, was placed under the custody of Constantine II until he came of age. The brothers were then each proclaimed Augustus, and went their ways. Constantius should defend the east from Shapur in a brutal war, Constans should have gay sex every day while he heard a prophecy of him dying in his grandmother's arms, and Constantine II to grumble over his desire for more territory. Not only that, but back in the time of the Council of Nicaea, after Santa Claus had beaten the shit shit out of Arius, that co-substantialist leader, Athanasius is the name, eventually got himself banished to Gaul for his own Christ-cuckery. And after convincing Constantine II to let him return east, Constantius sent him to fuck right off again, as he now adhered to some semi-Arianism, reflective of his dual nature of good and evil. Angered, Constantine II then ordered Constans, who had recently re-lost Dacia by the way, to give him all of the African provinces, threatening war. Constans submitted, of course, but didn't give up the lands of Carthage, claiming it was part of Italy, which is kinda justifiable. And since Constans had just come of age, lacking the authority to order him around, Constantine II just invaded Italy to take what was his by right as the eldest brother, marching to Aquileia, getting ambushed near it and killed. But you know what Constantine II did get? The Bibulus Award. I've been waiting for someone that deserved it a lot, and man. The two remaining brothers then—
because he didn't do jack thing. He didn't do a single thing and just died there. You could see him, he was just an, virgin, not a Chad.
split the empire among themselves, and passed a law banning gay marriage, not gay sex though, as Constans constantly demonstrated. All while Constantius kept fighting Shapur II for years, fighting battle after battle, retaking fort after fort. In his spare time, he appointed Eusebius as the bishop of Constantinople, who then died like a second later. He was then replaced by a dude Constantius had banished, so he sent his Magister Equitum to undo that, and the Christians burned him alive for that.
Okay, isn't that the guy that, was banished by him? So, the Constantine II sent it toward Constantius, I guess the names are so weird. So he banished him again and he was crying. That's the same guy came back again.
Would you believe? The furious Constantius then rode to the capital and instigated such fear that all of the plebs apologized, and he settled with cutting their food in half and re-exiling the Nicene bishop. Re-exiling him to Constance West, that is.
Why did he exile him? He should have just killed him right there. Yeah, that's the problem with, even the past emperors. They kept so many loose ties there. Loose ends. This is going to be, he'll probably stab him in the back in the end.
Surrounding him with so many Nicaean men that not only did he came, but he became Nicaean as well, ordering an ecumenical council to lift the exiles, which the eastern bishops ignored anyway. And taking a cue from his dead brother, Constans threatened Constantius with war if he didn't lift the exiles, which Constans reluctantly accepted to avoid a civil war. Having his way in politics, Constans then returned to have—
Alright, why is he keep, giving into him? He's just a kid. Why isn't he like, shut the hell up or I'll invade you or something? Maybe he's tired of all the inner fighting, maybe who the hell knows.
His way on the bed, being such a neglectful emperor that his legions, the ones fighting off the barbarians while he fucked all day, began to resent him. Something the commander of the Rhine legions, Magnentius, together with his two other generals, Marcellinus and Silvanus, noticed, thus revolting and acclaiming him as Augustus. And I don't know how he did this, but he got a hold of Justina as well, and married her, despite the fact that she was just a kid at the time. When the revolt became known, not a single legion remained with Constans. Fleeing for his life, he tried sneaking into Hispania to get away, but was found in the city of Helena, modern Elna, where Magnentius' men murdered him, as prophecies, indeed, never lie. Magnentius then told Constantius to marry him to his sister, Constantina, to ensure peace, invoking his wrath once again. Considering what to do, Constantius was then visited by his father in a nocturnal vision, who convinced him to crush Magnentius without mercy. But seeing that her brother was still busy in the east, Constantina then wrote a letter to Vetronio, an Illyrian general, telling him to take power against Magnentius in their name. Which he did, proclaiming himself Augustus and denying Magnentius access to Illyria. And once Constantius finally forced a truce with Shapur, something about a huge barbarian invasion from the east, he quickly marched west, facing Vetronio, who relinquished his acclamation and gave his—
Barbarian invasion from the east? What is that? Somebody's, invading Sassanid Empire?
allegiance to him, being rewarded with a generous pension to live the rest of his days in peaceful retirement. A happy ending, one of the last ones in the late Empire.
Somebody's loyal at least. In the past, any idiot with any ties to any claim to imperial throne, they are like, yeah, claim me Caesar, I'm the Augustus. Any idiot just revolts to claim themselves, king of the Rome, I guess. Emperor of Rome. Even though any idiot who becomes an emperor, and there has been some past, died immediately because they don't know first thing about how to defend Rome.
A not-so-happy story was that of Nepotianus, who gathered a bunch of gladiators, took Rome from Magnentius and declared himself Augustus, only for Magnentius to send Marcellinus to retake it and kill him along with his mother Eutropia. Now having killed almost half as many of his relatives as he had, and not trusting Shapur one bit to uphold the truce, Constantius named Gallus as his Caesar and Imperial puppet in the east, marrying him to Constantina and sending him to Antioch. And
wait a minute. Isn't the Gallus one of the 3 cousins of Constantinus or whatever his name is? And Constantina, isn't that Constantinus's, elder sister? So doesn't make them 2 cousins? So they're marrying their cousins apparently, okay.
And the second he arrived, the Jews revolted. Just kidding, they were incapable of a true revolt ever since Hadrian hadrianed them. So Gallus just sent a general named Ursicinus to slaughter the few thousand Jews and restore order to Syria Palestina. Gallus then appointed a piece of trash named Barbatio as his captain of the guard, being only the first stupid choice he would make. Back to the west, Magnentius took almost all of the legions from the Rhine for himself, letting the Germans invade the border cities and flood into the English Channel unchallenged. Meanwhile, Constantius then gathered his 50,000 men to face Magnentius' incoming army of the same size. But right before the battle, Silvanus defected to Constantius, taking 15,000 loyalists along with him and together crushing Magnentius in one of the bloodiest civil war battles to date. As Magnentius fled west, Constantius had to march east to deal with an increasingly larger barbarian presence in the Danube, as if they were being pushed west by something. After dealing with it, he again crushed Magnentius in the Alps.
Why is he making this some barbarian force coming from the east, like some Sauron is coming or something from the Lord of the Rings? He's hyping that up too much. What the hell is gonna come now?
Alps, making him flee and then kill himself, with the main legacy he left behind being the swarm of germs that then infested the west. But before Constantius could kick all of them out, he got letters from the east detailing just how shit of a Caesar Gallus had been, including reports of him murdering innocent pagans just to steal their money. Constantius then sent an official to have Gallus taken to him, but Gallus refused, imprisoning the official, and killing him along with several others he accused of plotting against him. Outraged, Constantius demanded him and his servants to come over to him in Milan, which he again refused, with only Ursicinus and Constantina obliging, with the latter dying on the way there from an illness. Seeing it wasn't working, Constantius then told Gallus that all he wanted was to elevate him as his co-Augustus in person, and Gallus actually fell for that, going to Italy being
This is awesome. I just want you to, raise you to be Augustus. He's like, is that right? I'm coming right now. I love when somebody does that. Being a bit of Dick Dastardly is awesome.
deprived of any soldiers, betrayed by Barbatio, and tortured in captivity so much that he said it was all Constantina's fault. Hearing him blaming his late sister to save his ass, Constantius ordered him to be executed, changing his mind later, but too late to save him. Not that he lost sleep over it. Forced to face crisis after crisis that drained his attention, Constantius became surrounded with opportunistic leeches, one of which hated Silvanus so much that he framed him for treason. But by the time Silvanus' men had proven him to be innocent, he decided he was screwed anyway and committed treason for real. Hearing of this betrayal, Constantius then sent Ursicinus to pretend to be ignorant of it, approached Silvanus.
One thing's for damn sure, by this time, Roman people have this, inner voices become this corrupt. That doesn't matter who it is, anybody who won't come close to the imperial throne just becomes corrupt and try to take it for themselves. This instability, obviously Rome was gonna fall. Rome became too big and people became so corrupt because of it to, seek that power. In the end, their own people is going to be their own downfall in the end. And that's what we've been seeing for past many episodes now. Everybody like, I can sense the, imperial throne is close. Call me Augustus, call me Caesar, whatever. I'm the next emperor. I don't think so, man.
Silvanus as his friend, and then execute him. Now having lost both his Caesar and commander of the Rhine legions, Constantius planned to fill both positions at once, with his last remaining male relative, his cousin Julian, who grew up into a wise and dutiful man. Constantius thus summoned Julian to Mediolanum, where he pondered about him for several months, trying to find any indications he would end up causing trouble like, every single one of his relatives had so far. but in the end he passed, with the help of Constantius's wife, Eusebia as well, who liked the young scholar. Constantius thus named Julian his Western Caesar, married him to his sister Helena the Younger, and sent him to the Rhine with Barbatio, now Magister Peditum, to deal with the germs. Once Julian arrived in Gaul, officers like Barbatio mocked him as an inexperienced nerd. And while it was true that Julian always desired a scholarly life, once given the responsibilities of a Caesar, he focused only and solely on learning how to administer provinces and lead armies in battle. For several months he trained non-stop, learned everything from those that would teach him, and practiced all the time. By the time the campaign was gonna start, Julian then led his men in battle, crushing the Germans and retaking all of the lost border cities, settling in a fort nearby in modern Verdun. So decisive were his victories that Constantius recalled resistance to the east to die in obscurity, and exchanged him with a shit general named Marcellinus, who together with Barbatio envied Julian's new excellence. Right after retaking the Rhine, a massive Frankish horde invaded Gaul, laying siege to near Verdun. Resisting their attacks, he asked for help from Marcellinus' main army in the south, but he outright simply refused to help him. So for many months, Julian remained besieged, fighting for his life. And it was only after Marcellinus came to fear Constantius' potential reprisal that he chose to help his Caesar. Not that it helped though, as he was demoted and banished the second Constantius heard of his treason. Julian then devised a punitive campaign, taking 13,000 men to invade through the west and giving Barbatio most of his army to invade the south. And to undermine Julian, Barbatio secretly let a German horde pass through and siege Lugdunum, forcing Julian to march south and break the siege. And Barbatio just let the horde go through without attacking them. With supplies from Britannia impossible to get, Julian then asked Barbatio for 2 grain shipments and 7 ships for the campaign, which Barbatio set ablaze instead. Julian then crossed anyway and ordered Barbatio to help him, and in response he unilaterally declared the campaign over and left Julian alone in Germania. As he barely crossed back into the empire, the Alemanni king, Cnodomar, followed on Balomar's steps, uniting 6 German tribes into a confederation and attacking Julian with a horde more than twice his army size. Making a stand nearby modern Strasbourg, Julian held back the Alemanni hordes, and even when they breached the lines, the Palatine legionaries slaughtered them, making the Germans flee in terror across the Rhine, bombarding them as they swam away, capturing Cnodomar before he could flee, and in total killing thousands of Germans while losing only a few plebs, later sending Cnodomar to his cousin Constantius. Thousands of Germans while
8,000 dead Germans and only 200 Romans with scratches. Man, that's so overpowering.
Losing only a few plebs, later sending Cnodomar to his cousin Constantius as a gift to the emperor. At the end of the battle, Julian's men acclaimed him as Augustus, which he outright refused to accept, remaining loyal to his cousin. And when Julian faced Barbatio for his actions, he blamed everything on 2 of his subordinates, among them Valentinian, having him expelled from the army and banished. But karma's a bitch, and later on Constantius found out Barbatio had planned to usurp power and had him executed. Now able to...
Nice. So far this episode's been good. There are a bunch of assholes that are rising up and betraying, but in the end they end up dying.
To rule properly, Julian led several punitive campaigns against the Germans, eventually capturing the other 5 German kings of the Confederation. And when at peace, he chose Lutetia Parisorum to rest in. Future, you know what. And in Proto-Paris, Julian clashed against the awful administration of Florentius, Gaul's garbage governor. In short, he wanted to raise taxes on the plebs and pay off the Franks to leave. So Julian then brought rich tax evaders to justice and invaded the Frankish heartland to make them stop. During it all, as Constantius was paying his first visit to Rome, he received a threat from Shapur, demanding all lands that had been ceded to Galerius and Diocletian decades back. And what's more, his wife Eusebia had just died, leaving him alone with the leeches around him. Constantius refused Shapur, especially after he had destroyed several cities and legions. And with Florentius bitterly lying about Julian being a traitor, Constantius called upon Julian's legions to be sent east as reinforcements, testing if he would remain loyal. Receiving the order, Julian then told the legions to follow him east, but they refused. He insisted and insisted, but the majority pleb and partially Germanic soldiers felt no sense of duty to the broader empire. Indeed, with threats of mutiny at hand, and with the legions acclaiming him Augustus again, he told them he accepted the title to put them in line. Then writing to Constantius, as a Caesar, that he would raise some Hispanian legions in their place.
Sure, he didn't want to become Augustus. Obviously, he was the man. He had to get them in line by claiming himself the Augustus, otherwise they wouldn't have come with him, of course. He wasn't greedy at all.
But Constantius's leeches convinced him this was proof of disloyalty. And yet he still focused on Shapur's invasion, for deep down, Julian was the last person alive Constantius respected. And while fighting the Germs, Julian learned that they had been incentivized to attack them from eastern officers, so he resolved to march east and settle this issue. Marching east, he then laid siege to Sirmium, which he took by having the garrison commander kidnapped and made to surrender it. The father-in-law of a soldier named Jovian, who wasn't there at the time. While in the desert, Constantius had secured yet another truce with Shapur, again something about an eastern threat. But as he marched west, Constantius became very ill, and at death's door, as his last wish, he named Julian as his rightful heir, and died. At the time, Julian had been resting in Issus, the homeland of the Constantinians, and when he heard of Constantius' death and last wish, he set forth to Constantinople. There he oversaw the burial of Constantius.
I feel like, he was already about to, revolt against Constantius, so become Augustus. So all this, obviously, the Doherty is just spinning it in a way that shows that he was just loyal, but his men forced him to become one. But obviously, that's not going to be the case. So in the end, he died. So automatically, he didn't know that he was gonna, challenge him and revolt against him. So he just made Julian, the next emperor, I guess. But he, so he came and saw that he's dead, and he saw that he already made him the next emperor. So like, yeah, okay. So he oversaw the burial and just, why would he revolt when he was already made an emperor?
Placing him beside his father, with the help of Jovian, who was there at the time. Acclaimed as the sole Augustus, Julian rejected both divine autocracy and imperial power sharing, choosing instead to revive the Principate, citing the Antonine emperors as his role models. Like Hadrian, he reformed the administration to run better by purging all of the leeches. Like Trajan, he granted the provinces, plebs, and senators autonomy. And just like Marcus Aurelius, he spent much of his free time on matters of philosophy, specifically pagan philosophy. Few came to understand Christianity better than Julian, and in addition of studying the pagan faiths, Julian had realized the truth. In his own words, he had spent 20 years a Christian, and 12 in the true way, the way of Helios, the sun god. Yes, Julian realized God's true nature, viewing the traditional ancient gods as allegories, as aspects of a philosophical divinity, professing a preference of paganism through his famous works that address this divine entity. Indeed, for after seeing Christianity so radically creep into Roman society at pagan expense, Julian sought to remove the special treatment Christians had gotten in excess, and for that they named him Julian, the apostate, and in turn he called them the Galileans. True to Constantine's Edict of Milan, Julian issued laws ensuring that the state wouldn't favor any religion to another, happily hiring competent Christians to serve in high positions, like Jovian, now captain of the Palatini, and Valentinian, now returned from exile. One of his main pet projects was to organize paganism as a united religion to stand on par with Christianity, but it was frustrated due to the decadence of its temples, among many other things. And so to restore the pagan cults, he visited the temple of the sun god Apollo, finding it in an absolutely appalling state, and fearing what divine punishment might be incurred if the cults of old were not respected, he began trying to restore it. And how did the Christians react, you ask? Yes, they set fire to it, and they would pay dearly for it. Not to Julian though, for despite their hatred for him, the worst thing Julian ever did to the Christians was to forbid them to teach the classical texts. And despite him being the most approachable emperor in decades, the plebs were estranged by him not lording over them. I mean, he did try to rebuild the second temple just to annoy the Christians a bit, but it's their fault if they can't take banter. But then again, as emperor, Julian always sought to focus on protecting the empire above all. And in a move that would pick up where his uncle and cousin left off, Julian emulated Trajan and sought to end Eastern barbarity for good, splitting the army with...
I guess he didn't do anything to Christianity because obviously, Constantine the Great obviously respected him. And obviously he was a Christian because of that for 20 years. So he's like, okay, I'm back to paganism, but still Christianity still has place.
His maternal aka non-Constantinian cousin, Procopius, who he ordered to bait the Sassanids north and then link up with him at Ctesiphon. Using brilliant strategy, he invaded through the Euphrates River and used an old canal he had read about to cross into the Tiber and siege Ctesiphon unexpectedly, passing through the monument Trajan had built nearby long ago. But Procopius was late to link up. Very late. forcing Julian to attack Ctesiphon right away, but failing to do so due to not having enough soldiers. And after Shapur had destroyed his own lands to deprive Julian of food, he continued waiting, but Procopius never did arrive. So one fateful day, Shapur attacked Julian from all directions at once with his hordes. The attack was so sudden, Julian had no time to armor up and rushed out to lead his legions. And in the midst of fighting, Julian was impaled by a spear, which he fiercely tried taking out, cutting his hands and losing so much blood that he collapsed on the battlefield. Taken away from the battle, he resisted for several days, but never did recover. In his last breath, he ironically said, "Vicisti, Galilei, you have won."
Wait a minute, did he say for days?
Tried taking out, cutting his hands and losing so much blood that he collapsed on the battlefield. Taken away from the battle, he resisted for several days, but never did recover.
He has a hole in his body throughout. And he resisted for days? How is that possible?
In his last breath, he ironically said, "Vicisti, Galilei, you have won, Galilean." He was the last of the Constantinians, and the last pagan emperor to rule Rome. Mourning Julian, but needing a quick replacement, the generals eventually voted Jovian to be the new emperor. Now himself the sole Augustus, Jovian tried buying more time for Procopius' army to link up with them, but nope, and after getting encircled, Jovian surrendered to Shapur II. Had he had his way,
He still thinks he's gonna come. He didn't come for this much time, why would he come now?
Shapur would have enslaved, tortured and killed every last one of them, but his attention was needed east, for an evil even greater than his own
For the love of
him.
God, again, what the hell is coming from the east?
Jovian thus returned west by giving up all of the lands gained by Galerius and Diocletian, and only then Procopius' army met with him. In his short and highly mocked reign, he was convinced by Athanasius, yes still alive, to restore all of Christianity's favoritism over paganism, ordered Valentinian to guard an inconsequential area near Nicaea, sent Julian's corpse to be buried by a half-Frankish general, Meribaldis, and then went to sleep. And out of all ways for an emperor to die, after he slept nearby a lit brazier, the heat made the freshly painted walls release poisonous fumes, which killed him over the night. The surprised generals then sent word to the nearest competent general, the consequentially nearby Valentinian, to fill the power vacuum. Now the emperor, Valentinian was among the diminishing minority of true Romans still bearing its old values, among them an intense hatred for germs. And choosing to focus on said germs, when he got to Constantinople, he split the empire with his brother, Valens, giving him the east as co-Augustus, while he took the west to do the only thing he enjoyed in life. When he got to the Rhine, he made it clear to the germs that he was not their friend. Never directly though, as Valentinian knew he always got too angry when dealing with germs in person. And in the east, Valens heard that Shapur was, torturing the Armenian king to death, so he marched his legions there to stop him. But just as he did, Procopius emerged out of nowhere and took Constantinople for himself, claiming that Valentinian was dead and that Julian had named him as his heir, bribing 2 pleb legions into his service along with allying with the Goths. When the news reached the west, Valentinian prepared to go help his brother, but once begged to stay by the locals, and after the germs invaded Gaul, Valentinian concluded protecting his citizens was more important than saving his family. Valens in turn, after pondering suicide, chose to fight on, and despite some setbacks, he managed to defeat the usurper's army, making them betray and deliver Procopius to him chained, who he then had executed.
Nice.
Not the last Procopius we will hear from, unfortunately. Valens then concentrated on the Goths, leading a campaign against them and winning some victories, but had to retreat, for more and more Goths were concentrating in the Danube. And while he was restoring Diocletian's forts in the Danube, the dead Armenian king's son, Pap, yes his name was Pap, came to him asking for help against Shapur, who was again ransacking Armenia. While in the west, Valentinian did what he did best, slaughtered thousands of invading germs. As emperor, Valentinian gained a reputation for brutal justice, ordering straight-up execution for anyone remotely barbaric or disrespectful towards Rome. And to carry out the executions, he kept 2 huge bears as his pets, Golden Camel and Innocence, ordering them upon anyone foolish enough to break the law. His wife was a bisexual woman named Marina, and I say bisexual because the moment she got acquainted with Justina, now an adult and the most beautiful woman in the empire, she practically implored Valentinian to marry her too to get an imperial threesome going. So then Valentinian issued a law that made polygamy legal, on top of another one that forbade the clergy from inheriting property, as they were growing far too greedy for his liking. But never satisfied, Valentinian then gathered a massive army to launch a punitive campaign in Germania, but had to cancel it, for he caught wind of a conspiracy against Rome. A great conspiracy. Sensing weakness on the western frontiers caused by Magnentius' revolt, the Franks, the Picts, and the Hibernians conspired with some plebeian traders to make Britannia burn. And among them was another conspirator, a new Germanic race, those who desired Britannia the most, the Saxons. Invading simultaneously, the Saxons and Franks broke through the southern forts Carausius once built. The Picts bribed the plebeian traders to let them through Hadrian's Wall, and the Hibernians invaded through the undefended western shore. By the time Valentinian was informed, almost all of Britannia had fallen.
The Saxons, he was talking about the great evil force coming from the east, because it doesn't feel like it. He didn't hype them up enough and he announced them. So I don't think it's the Saxons, so some other force is coming, is there?
Fast, he sent a general to go retake Britannia, but he failed. He then sent a better one, but the weather impeded him from landing. Having run out of options, Valentinian sent his best general, Count Theodosius the Elder, with a huge army to retake Britannia. Sailing from Bononia, he landed and set himself up in Londinium, from where he started to meticulously slaughter, arrest, and subdue everyone on the island. In one swift campaign, he had retaken the entire island, returned all the stolen wealth, and renamed Northern Britannia in Valentinian's honor. But at the same time, Valentinian had gotten a sickness. So damn sick he became that he named his disappointment of a son he had with Marina, Gratian, as his heir to secure stability. Young weaklings governed by their mothers, a future imperial standard. Taking advantage of it all, the Germs ransacked the imperial borders again, and all Valentinian could do was to arrange the murder of one of their Germ kings. Germs killing Germs, one of the only things that made Valentinian smile. And after recovering, Valentinian then led his delayed punitive campaign with vicious brutality, disinfecting the frontier as much as possible. As he did, nearby a fort, the Germs formed a huge horde and launched a surprise attack. Surviving several attacks by countless Germs, Valentinian slaughtered them all despite the odds in a bloody battle, proving himself beyond too angry to die. And later, when Valentinian ordered a fort built nearby the battlefield, the Germs demanded an audience with the emperor, which he wisely refused, and so they destroyed the half-built fort, making him furious. To deal with the Alemanni, Valentinian set up the Burgundians to agree to attack them, but once they demanded to talk with him, Valentinian also refused, and so the Burgundians didn't attack the Alemanni as promised, infuriating him again. Later, as Theodosius was doing
why are they trying to talk to him? That hasn't happened in the past.
his best to civilize the Germs, news reached him and Valentinian about the pure shit show going down in Africa. The governor was shit, the Moors had revolted, the plebs were plebbing, so Valentinian sent Theodosius to go fix it, which he again did swiftly, arresting the shit governor and capturing the Moorish rebel leader Sulla style. As for Valentinian, he continued ordering forward bases built in barbarian lands, this time in the Danube. You know the drill, they demanded an audience, were ignored, this time by the local official in Valentinian's name, and so they attacked the fort under construction. Addressing it, another commander invited the Germ leadership for dinner, and slaughtered them all to prevent a revolt. But who said that Germs need leadership to cause trouble? Nah. Instead, they just invaded along with the Sarmatians like the mindlessly destructive war they were. 2 legions were then sent to stop them, but the 2 plebs leading them were shit, didn't cooperate and failed to fight the barbarians, a future standard for imperial legates. Another smaller Sarmatian horde invaded Moesia as well, but were halted by the legions of the local governor, the son of Theodosius, the Theodosius, and my blood is already boiling. Getting notified of the invasion, Valentinian once again suppressed his anger, and left the Rhine after a whole decade to go save the Danube. Arriving in the provincial capital, he found it completely abandoned, a casualty of the marauding barbarians, making Valentinian crush them and counter-terrorize their mud huts. And as he did, the barbarians began pleading for mercy, vowing their innocence and blaming it all on the Romans, which made Valentinian even angrier, and so he judged the barbarians guilty and further destroyed their lands into submission. After that, Valentinian simply had had enough. German barbarity, treason against Rome, insubordination towards the emperor, and years of suppressing his anger had driven him to the very limit. Which is why he then sought peace, ending the victorious campaign and returning to chill in his camp. As per the terms of the treaty, the Germs were granted the chance to
God damn, how many Germs did he kill? Doesn't matter how many he kills, they always come back, And why do they want to talk to him? That hasn't happened in the past. Is that because of some things coming from the east?
Speak and confess to their crimes against civilization, but they refused to do so, and once reminded of the peace treaty terms, they revealed that they had lied, saying that they would continue to attack Rome. The Germs had come to express their true intentions, the singular German lust to sack, kill, and destroy all that is civilized being all they ever thought about. They would never stop attacking the Romans peacefully.
Why the hell did they want to talk then? Just to say that we are not gonna stop ever? What, they're trying to intimidate them or something? Intimidate Romans, really? In the past, they've always, crushed Germans like it's nothing. Why are they trying to intimidate the Romans? Do they sense that they are weak somehow or something? Because so far, Romans are, crushing Germans left and right, even now.
Truly or not, and there was nothing the Romans and their emperor could do about it.
Very nice. Did he just have an aneurysm or something? God damn, that was epic. I love how the setup was. The Germans just, shit talking there. We are never going to stop. We are going to do this and do that. And this was just like, no, shut up. And in the background, he was just sitting there with red eyes. This was epic.
So intense was Valentinian's wrath, he burst a blood vessel in his brain. His legacy would be that of the last strong Western Augustus to rule an empire at peace. However, the true catastrophe was yet to come. With Valentinian's death, Gratian was not the de jure Western emperor, but de jure only. For shortly after, Mirabaldi sought to exploit Valentinian's death, elevating the 4-year-old son he had with Justina, Valentinian II, as Augustus, but a puppet more like, another soon-to-be standard for young emperors. And Gratian didn't dispute it. Nope, he recognized his brother as co-Augustus and split the Western Empire with him. Taking advantage of his power, Mirabaldi turned on Count Theodosius, who he had always envied, ordering his troops in Africa to execute him. Back to Valens, he had returned Pap to Armenia after much struggle. Again, Shapur had problems in the east. And addressing their own eastern problems, the Goths agreed to a peace treaty with Valens, severing all diplomatic ties in a Danubian island. But then Pap showed himself to be a horrible king, forcing Valens to depose him, which then triggered Shapur to invade for, I don't know man, the 7th time or something, forcing the eastern legions to go to Syria. Meanwhile, for some time now, far into the eastern lands, an unspeakable evil had emerged and marched west, possessing the power and numbers to destroy the whole world. It hadn't yet arrived, but it had begun to make waves. Beyond the Danube, the Goths were the first to be attacked by this new enemy, against which they stood absolutely no chance. Getting slaughtered and losing their lands, they fled further and further west. Such were the horrors and evil the Goths were subjected to, only the worst of them survived, distinguished into two groups, the Western Goths and the Eastern Goths, the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths. Valens had been completely...
Okay, so they are the gods that survived, not the evil from the east that is coming. What is the evil from the east that is coming though?
Aware of the situation until he received a fateful message from the west. When the frontier guards saw the barbarians approaching, they found the Goths utterly beaten and desperate for help. So desperate that the king of the Visigoths, Fritigern, came begging for asylum. In total, hundreds of thousands of Visigoths and Ostrogoths alike began building up on the Danube, with only a few thousand Limitani legionaries to halt them. Still most...
something is extremely screwed up. When Sassanid Empire doesn't care about Rome because he has problem in the east. The gods have the problem in the east. And everybody's just have problem in the east. You could feel it like, oh no, something's coming and that's not going to be good. What the hell is it coming though?
Mostly concerned with Shapur, unaware of the monsters behind the Gothic displacement, and feeling pity for the Goths, Valens committed the second biggest mistake of his life, and granted the Goths asylum. For Valens in his delusion thought that the Goths would agree to give up all of their weapons, be dispersed into small manageable groups across the empire, renounce their tribal leaders and integrate as loyal Roman citizens. And the moment the legion started letting Fritigern and his Goths pass through, the Ostrogoths and the rest of the hordes charged across the river, forcing themselves in. And now the Goths were inside the empire, fully armed, united, and loyal to their barbaric leaders. Forced into an impossible situation, the local Roman commander did what he could, granting them access to the food markets to appease them, but the hundreds of thousands proved impossible to all feed, making them ever less controllable. So he then captured the entire Gothic leadership in an ambush, including Fritigern, hoping to sever the head of the beast before he went on a rampage. But again, it's germs we're dealing with here. And at the first excuse to go on a rampage, the leaderless Goths went on to raid and burn everything on sight, sieging the fort their leaders were taken to, an opportunity Fritigern took to approach the commander, promising he would calm them down if he was freed. Seeing no other choice, Fritigern was allowed to reunite with his horde, and then he immediately betrayed his word and ordered it to continue ransacking the countryside. When Valens heard of this, he immediately began seeking a truce with Shapur for, well, I'm not counting. And when Gratian heard, he ordered as many Western legions.
Oh my god, that's grim, look at that. Look at the Shapur.
I don't.
They are here. Who are here?
I'm not counting. And when Gratian heard, he ordered as many Western legions as possible to go east and help his uncle. But Maraboduus had other plans, severely delaying and limiting the amount of legions sent, as he didn't want to take orders from the weakling Gratian. When the Western legions arrived, they managed to
I hate that guy. I hate them. Whenever your country is under attack and you just care for yourself and don't care about other part of the country, that's beyond traitor. I just hate that guy.
somewhat contained the Gothic raids, but they weren't enough to defeat the Goths. Reinforcements were dearly needed. After ending the war with Shapur, Valens gathered most of the eastern legions, his best men, and marched west. And Gratian also gathered his own legions and marched east. But before he did, he was informed by Maraboduus the Alemanni were raiding the Danube. Motivated only to defend his own lands, Maraboduus pressured the weak Gratian to ignore the Gothic threat, making him delay his reinforcements for several months while the situation worsened. By the time Valens had arrived in Thrace, he was informed his nephew's legions would still take months to arrive, and also that Fritigern had gathered 10,000 Visigoths encamped nearby Adrianople, seeking to soon sack it. As he waited for Gratian, Valens started to think about things. He had been made emperor by his big brother in whose shadow he always lived. He was never taken seriously enough neither to prevent usurpers nor to prevent enemies from invading, and now, as his best generals advised him to, he was waiting for his nephew to come help him, in his own lands. Blinded by his pride and deafened by the garbage some shit advisors told him, Valens committed the worst mistake of his life, and decided to attack the Goths on his own. In his rush to prove he could win his own battles, Valens marched his men 8 whole hours in the scorching heat before facing the Goths on their fortified positions. Without orders, an insubordinate leader of the right flank attacked, forcing Valens to march his legions after them and engage in the Gothic horde, against which the veteran legions began to push back. Despite all his shitty decisions, Valens' legions were about to break through the Visigothic lines, but they had ran out of time, and the consequences of Valens' actions met up with him. 10,000 Ostrogothic cavalry then suddenly charged into the battlefield, scattering the Roman cavalry and flanking the legions from behind. Tired, encircled, and poorly led, the legionaries were helplessly slaughtered one after the other.
Alright, his music is sometimes too loud, it's hard to listen to what he's saying, but yeah.
After the catastrophe, the wounded Valens was taken by a survivor to a nearby farmhouse, where he was placed to recover from his wounds. While outside, the Goths continued to burn everything on sight, including the farmhouse, unaware of who he was delayed inside. The Eastern Emperor was dead, most of his legions destroyed, and a gigantic Gothic horde now raided the empire with no army to stop them. They would never leave. Among the many invading Goths, the seeds of future despair came with them, among them a young child. Out of all barbarians that brought misery to the pages of history, few matched the deeds of the future king of the Visigoths. Few indeed, but not none. In fact, the greatest threat the empire would ever face was not Germanic, nor like anything they had ever faced before. They were beyond evil. They were the scourge of God. They were the Huns, and they were here.
The Huns? Who's that? It's over. The Huns? That's the greatest evil that is coming from the east? Who's that, man? Why are they so powerful that everybody is a Sassanid Empire and everybody was so scared like something's coming, something's coming? God damn. So I guess they are the one who's gonna brought Rome down, huh? And obviously the Western Rome, Eastern Rome's obviously survived, called the Byzantine Empire, which I think Dovet is working on right now. Yeah, his next series is on Byzantine Empire, I think. That was the Imperial Wrath, and next one is Barbarians at the Gates. Obviously, that's going to be the Huns that he says. Those are going to be there, and in the end, the fall of Rome. The next two is even more sadder than this one. This was sad up to a point. Some of them were, higher points, but next two videos are going to be really sad. I hate when, the people care about themselves rather than the country. That guy just, the guy who, married, what's her name? Julian, I don't know. The guy who was, handling the middle part of the empire. That guy was just an a-hole. Even though, in the West, gods were attacking, he didn't care about that. People like that come to power and that becomes the fall of the entire empire. Sometimes feels like, sometimes I think Rome should have stayed with the massive dictatorship. Because clearly, people just claiming themselves, any damn virgins claiming themselves to be an emperor, that's a massive issue. The great emperors die because some idiot wanted to have power. Roman Empire basically became so big that, the power became so big that people just wanted it for themselves, and any idiot was just rising up to take the throne. And that's, in the end, is going to be its downfall. But no great Chad emperors left. And this massive threat is coming, and that's the end of Rome. Alright people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment down if you want me to react to some different video, or check out my other reaction videos in the description and cards or even card. I'll see you next time.